I'm bringing you another profiling session. Only this one's going to be a little bit different from my past profiling sessions that I've posted. I usually don't tell you guys what the type of the person is. Of course, for all of them, I never know what the person's type is before going in, including this one. But for this one, I wanted to let you guys know in advance that Matt Perkins, the person that I profiled, is an ESFJ. That way, as you watch the profiling session, you guys can get an idea of how a healthy ESFJ comes out, and how like the internal workings or even just everything else about them might come off, especially as an ESFJ male. Um, I know that one thing that a lot of you may realize is that you might see how a lot of ESFJs, despite having tertiary intuition, can come off as an intuitive. And Matt himself even said that he misidentified after taking the original test as an INFP, and he consistently kept on getting that. And some of you might watch it and be able to see, oh, I can see how he got the INFP. A lot of you may also watch and be like, what? How? There's FE all over the place. Um, but yeah, so Matt Perkins is an ESFJ, and I just wanted to give you guys the opportunity to be able to watch me as I conduct this profiling session in the verification process. He knows nothing about type. The only thing that he knows about it was just taking the Myers-Briggs, but he never even considered being an extrovert or even being an ESFJ. He knows nothing about the cognitive functions. So this was a very interesting profiling session because he kind of went in with a blank slate, and I had to like break everything down to him as if he knew nothing about it at the end. So hope that you guys enjoy. Let me know what you guys think in the comments, and also if you guys are interested in any profiling sessions by me, my services are in the description below. And you guys can email me at dweezy number 2 blessed at icloud.com. Title it profiling session, and we can get it started. All right, y'all enjoy. Cool. All right. So the way this goes, pretty much, it's pretty simple to be honest. I'm gonna ask you a whole bunch of invasive questions, and you have to answer them. No, I'm kidding. um, but no, like I'm gonna be asking you like a few questions, just to kind of like get an idea of like how you are, how you think of yourself, how other people think of you, and then by the end of this session, when I feel confident in which of the personality types best fits you, then I'm going to tell you like, okay, this is what type that I think that you are. And then we go into the verification process because at least for me, I don't believe that the journey ends in profiling with, just saying like, this is what type that you are, period. But it's me also explaining to you, like, this is why I think what type you are. And did I mishear this part? Or does this actually resonate? Is it giving you like a, yeah, I guess, maybe, or, oh no, like this really is me. And so, yeah, that's pretty much like all that you'd have to do. And however you interpret certain questions, you can go ahead and answer it that way, but you can also ask like for clarification. And yeah, and just to make sure, for the verification process, do you know anything about the Myers-Briggs at all?
Just a little bit. It's funny. My sister actually studied psychology, and she would share little things here and then. I've done a little bit of reading, and I've done some of those online Myers-Briggs tests. But again, I would not say I'm an expert in any way. So I mean, any context or information that you feel that so I mean I know just a little bit. As with most things, I feel like a little bit, just enough to be dangerous.
Okay, gotcha. Cool. That works out. Yeah, I just wanted to make sure so that when I do get to the verification process, it gets very technical. And so I wanted to know like, okay, do I do like spoon feeding, but then would that come off condescending? But if I do the very technical stuff, then then it's like,
I go,
oh, I don't understand exactly. So cool, then I'll know what to do from there. All right,
perfect.
Matthew. Well, or Matt, whichever.
That's great. Thank you.
Awesome. First question I want to ask you: what is something that you love to do? And when I say you love to do, I mean that you love to do so much that the only reason why you stop is because you're absolutely exhausted. Otherwise, you'd go on indefinitely.
Oh, that is great. I love taking photos,
Mm.
and I don't know, just one thing, right?
Yeah. Oh no.
I love
Well, we
photography.
can. Yeah, we can go as much as you like.
Okay.
As many
And then
things.
also, I love making food, cooking, baking, and of course eating it as well.
Oh yeah.
And also, I think I love making and drinking coffee.
Oh okay. Nice.
And also, I love gardening and plants, um, and working outside. That one probably I can get to an exhaustion quicker than some other things. But no, I love being outside and in nature and taking care of plants and stuff. So
Nice. Okay. Cool. Yeah, that's really good. I actually want to dive into these right
cool.
away.
Cool.
What is it about taking photos that you enjoy so much?
I think I love just creating, and photography is such an interesting artistic medium because in a way, as my sister always said, because I'll talk about family a lot sometimes, but no, she's
Yeah.
like, oh, baby could take a photo. But there's something about photography that you use a specific tool and then you capture a moment and you can just bring your own perspective and your own, kind of how you see the emotions of the moment. And I love beauty. I love kind of, but also reality, the capturing, it feels like a very real medium to me because like it's very you're capturing how you see things, and of
Mhm.
course and then others are able to experience that as well. So
Yeah. Yeah.
I think it's the creativity and just kind of that capturing that moment that you can go back and remember how you felt, and then of course hearing how others perceive the photo, or
Mhm.
yeah, and just sharing how you see the world with others, or how I see it.
Nice. That's really good. And what about gardening?
I think again, similarly, the creative element of it and the beauty, and of course, you do a lot of vegetable gardening because I live at home with my parents right now still, and just kind of being with especially dad, and kind of working alongside someone else, but just being a part of creating, and then having um, the fruits and vegetables and flowers. I love flowers to use, and again, share with others, but also get a rich um, personal satisfaction out of having done the work to grow this and take care of it. And then again, I think though ultimately though it's the beauty, it's kind of trying to take some bare earth and then seeing all the green and the colors
Mhm.
grow up, and just what a um, and then having something to share with others, whether it be a bouquet of flowers or sending them some squash or something. Like I love all that, and
Nice.
work of taking care of it and trying to keep the rabbits and squirrels and slugs or whatever out of it all is kind of rewarding, so.
Yeah. Actually, I didn't even know that slugs were a problem for gardens. Are they really?
They can be, especially here in the Seattle area. They love this when you get to summer they kind of die, but early on with the little plants, when they come up, those
Mhm.
slugs will just they can decimate tiny plants, and so you have to do preventative measures to
Wow.
away. They have a
That,
purpose in the woods, it's like stay in the woods, slugs, and there's all the
yeah.
different varieties too.
For
I
sure.
could go on about
No, yeah, okay. Yeah, no, that's good. That's good. That's good to know. Um, all right. And oh yeah. What would you say you like about the baking, cooking, even if it's
again.
a similar thing?
Probably a theme here, but again, I love creativity, and of course with the baking, I mean, I love to eat, probably too
Mhm.
much sometimes, but again, I guess it's a personal satisfaction. But then again, whether it's my mom and dad because I cook dinner for them and meals every day, and then myself, of course, being able to share that with them, and then sometimes other people, because like back in the day before COVID, you could have dinner parties or take baked goods to work or what. So again, kind of the creativity to share. And then, there's a beauty in baking and cooking and all of that as well, because you take all the different elements. And of course there's also kind of with all this, there's a practice element too. You have to keep getting better and figuring out what works and what doesn't. And but yeah, it's a lot of just the creativity and making something nice for myself and others. So
Beautiful. Would you say that you're someone who, like when it comes to all of these things, like, although clearly like you have an eye for the beauty and the like creativity of it, like would you say that you're someone who's like pretty like procedural with it all too? Like, are you good with like following, like, okay, this is how the recipe's kind of like supposed to go, this is how it's worked all the time, and I feel a little bit comfortable like adding a little twist to it, but I don't want to veer too far off? Or how do you feel with that?
Denzel, that's a great question. And I think, from my work and then, volunteer stuff at church I think I understand procedures, but sometimes, and I get why they're there, but sometimes I find myself kind of balking at them and like I want to do it my own way. So I mean, it's funny, like with new recipes in particular, like the first time I do something, I'll be very procedural and I'll try to like, figure out what the steps are with the, internet recipe or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But then, when it kind of comes day by day, like if I've done something a lot, I can find myself getting a lot more free with the procedure, because I know, well, it says to do it, like you have to mix for instance, for the baking, like you mix the flour and the baking soda and the baking powder and the salt together. Well, I'm like, in a separate bowl. I'm like, well, practically when I'm baking, and again, I know that it technically does change the chemistry sometimes, but I'll just put all the elements in together, not in a separate bowl, in the main bowl, kind of, so I'll play with the procedure a little bit.
Okay.
And honestly, I kind of live in this bit of conflict sometimes. It's because like, I know what the procedure is, but I'm going to bend it a little bit. And then so I feel, it's funny, I feel like I feel like my best self should be more procedural, but then I'm like, well, is that true? I don't know. So that's kind of maybe a long-winded answer to that question.
No, that's really, really poignant. Okay, interesting. Yeah, just give me a moment. I'm trying to get detailed with the notes. I'm curious though. Why do you think that potentially like your best self would be like to follow the procedure?
I think I can tend to listen to what other people have to say, or what I read a lot, and I come across a lot of articles, and it's funny because I'm very involved with my church, and I kind of built our live stream system over this last year and a half, because we were a very small church. But as part of this, the pastor, who I really value, he's been asking me like, well, how can you document your process so you can teach others and share it? And so I guess I feel like being more procedural makes what I do, it's more what's the word I'm looking for? Kind of like replicate. You can replicate it, and you can tell others how to do it. And if I'm trying to explain something to someone, like how I do it, maybe a little more haphazard, I feel like the results for someone else would be less positive than if I gave them a procedure that I follow. Does that make sense? I feel like when I don't follow the procedures, then it can work for me, but it might not work for others. And then of course, you read all the studies about how standard work, and it's more efficient, and it's more so that I think that's kind of where I'm coming from when I say that.
Yeah.
I feel like when I do it my own way, I bring a little more chaos and stuff, which I personally can manage and I'm okay with. But then when it comes to trying to teach or train someone else or collaborate with someone else, I feel like that level of chaos can be distracting and potentially less collaborative and efficient,
Yeah, yeah. Beautiful. Got you. Would you say that you are an organized person?
Personally, no. Although everyone always thinks I'm organized, which I laugh at. I'm like, no, because my old boss always, oh Matt, you're because we talked a little bit, oh, you're so organized, and I'm like, well, okay, my desk is organized. You haven't seen my computer working files, and then you have not seen my bedroom. Which again, I'm always working on it. I feel like I'm a worker, but I short, concise answer is no, but I strive to be more organized.
Okay. Do you feel like other people, do you feel like there's more people who are less organized than you or more organized? Like, where would you rate yourself on the scale of that?
Honestly, I would say that I'm better at being seen and coming across as I'm better at managing my own personal lack of organization. So then it ends up with me being able to deliver and be more organized. But I think that's where I do. I think I'm kind of hard on myself, or very hard on myself sometimes. So I always feel like I could be more organized. But I would say that I'm more organized than a lot of folks.
Got you. Okay. Got you. All right. How else would you describe yourself? Feel free to brag if you want to. This is non-judgment zone.
Thank you, Denzel. This is great. I'm very I want to say I'm very creative, very artistic. I can also be lazy. I live and so I live in a lot of tension and kind of have a lot of have a very active voice in my head. Let's put it that way. I always saying, you could do this better, or you need to do more, or, I love collaborating and being around people, but I also love being by myself. I love those 10-mile hikes in the woods where you just, see people passing by. But then I also like when it comes, especially comes to work, I love being a part of a group and, working with other people and hearing different perspectives. I love creating things or being around, beauty and ordered things, but also, realize that life's messy and there's a certain beauty in chaos as well. Yeah, it's I love nature, music is a big part of my life. And of course, the photography and just seeing things, hearing things, just really, enjoying all of God's creation. And yeah, that's kind of a long-winded answer.
No, you're good. This is great.
I think I feel a lot of things too. Like I can be very empathetic and you know if people around me are not feeling well, or kind of more emotionally or physically for that, but I can get very concerned about things. I like things to be I like peace, but then I also like to call out when I see things that aren't creating peace or are problematic. And sometimes I've been called very, very political. I can I like reading people and figuring out how personally to interact with them, and then also sometimes figuring out how to get other folks that need to work together, being able to work together. But then of course that can get messy quickly sometimes. But again, then that's when sometimes I'm okay with the mess, whether I feel good about that or not. Because yeah, I think I can be very, very emotional. Anyway, yeah, that's a little bit more, or a lot more.
Gotcha. Yeah. You said that others can see you as political. Can you
Yes.
describe more of how that is?
Yeah, I can be very measured in how I talk, and
Hmm.
I can say things that might protect me or something I'm very concerned about in a situation, and I can sometimes put my own thoughts on something kind of on the back burner, if you will, and kind of say what other people want to hear to achieve an objective that I feel good about. And but then again, I mean, and I think though very often, especially as I continue to live life, I definitely see though how that can be problematic. But again, I want to often be what other people want or need me to be, and then I can say things and do things that protect that. And then also if I'm working for someone or on a project, I can you know do a pretty good job of working folks to achieve what they need to achieve. And I won't necessarily always speak my mind. I think that's where a lot of times people will see that in me, and they just want to throw up their hands and leave the situation, but I'll be there trying to smooth things over. And yeah, I think that's a bit of it.
Perfect. Okay. How would you say others describe you? Like you kind of gave a little bit of that, but like, yeah, you
Yeah.
like how you describe yourself, which you see yourself as disorganized, but other people see you as organized. So that's like one thing. What are
Mhm.
some other things that people see as whether or not you agree with it?
I think folks see me as optimistic, and I often joke about fat and jolly. That's kind of been my persona a lot, especially at
Mhm.
work. I'm a yes man. I'm a get stuff done. Very results driven. Collaborative to a point, yet also sometimes I can get frustrated when people maybe don't quite deliver that what they should be delivering. And I've heard that it gets. I personally want to be collaborative, but a lot of times I'm also very results driven, and want things to be good. So then and again, shouldn't, but often do, well, I'll just do it myself. I'll take on a lot of work to get things done, because I again can exert that control, especially when people have not delivered, or dare I say let me down sometimes. So then I think people see me as taking on a lot of work and actually potentially more insular. And I've kind of been, and I say this maybe not, I don't mean, but I feel like I was kind of called out a few months ago and in the church because they're like, oh, well, you're not letting other people help you. And I was like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Well, that's because first of all, it's a very small, there's no one else to really help. And then but then like but you do everything yourself, and I'm like, well, that's because there's no, so I think that there's a lot of people see me as probably kind of a perfectionist. I think, and then through that, not letting other people in. And again, I try to be collaborative, especially with people who I feel are high performers and going to be able to deliver. But I think there is the perception, and I think it may be correct, that sometimes if I have doubts about other team members performance, I will then take on more on myself and potentially burn myself out anyway. And I think people see the creativity, they see the because the music, the art, the photography, I should say, and they'll see me as really just able to perform, or do what they would kind of been asked to play music for events, or take a photo for someone. So yeah.
Nice, 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 great.
Thank you.
Okay. Um, how would you describe how you were like as a child, whether it is from what you remember or what other people have told you,
Mhm.
and even your upbringing?
Yeah. So I was homeschooled all 12 years of my
Mm.
education, and lived across the driveway with my mom and dad and two younger siblings from my grandparents on dad's side. So dad's mom and dad. And I spent a lot of time with old people.
Mm.
And it's funny. I feel like I don't know if the old term "old soul" like I've never really heard. Like, I feel like a little bit of that in a way. But I remember even like back to say 6 years old. I always feel like I've been large for my age physically, but I've also been I feel like mentally, I've always felt mentally superior to my peers because
Oh.
I spent a lot of time with and we weren't part of a co-op or anything, so it was just basically me and I mean if we had a few friends through church or whatever, but I was around by and large older folks, and even my parents were older when they got married, so I didn't even have young parents. But my parents, my grandparents, my parents and grandparents friends, and I think um I was put in a lot of situations where I think again I think people thought I was older than I was, even at a young age. And I often joked at something where I feel like when I say I was 13, I was more mature than I am now at 34, because I was very uptight, and I mean one could probably say shy. um but again I remember the creativity and flowers and all of that has always been a big part of my life, and then that kind of caused sometimes some some tensions with my peers, especially other males, because usually 10-year-old boys don't care about floral arrangements or anything like that. So I always felt different, and I didn't play a lot of I didn't do a lot of athletics, or a lot of music became an extracurricular. I took piano lessons and violin lessons, and yeah, so that's a little bit my child. And to touching on that political thing as well, and especially as I look back, and of course I have to be careful because sometimes memories can grow or be tweaked in our mind. But I remember even as a child getting in situations, and I often joke that my grandma taught me how to be political. And I was probably about 8 years old or so, and the one Christmas, dad decided we weren't going to participate in the extended familial or family gathering. And I knew a little bit about, and I was over at grandma's house one day, and she started talking to me. She said, well, Matt, can you talk to your dad to get you all to come to the Christmas. So like, and then I was kind of like, oh, I have to play grandma and dad. So like, I think at a very young age, some of that interpersonal, or the drama kind of started becoming something I started practicing at a young age, for better or for worse. But
Nice.
I'm just
Nice.
telling everything here.
Look, I love it. That look, and let me tell you right now, that's a superpower. That's a superpower. Trust me. They were doing you a favor, even if they didn't know it.
Yeah. Now the part of that superpower is how to like to be perfect. Yeah, no, because I feel like I'm still working on figuring out how to kind of recharge though with that, because a lot of times these interactions will leave me feeling pretty depleted and empty. Anyway, that's yeah, but
Yep.
thank you.
Yep. Gotcha.
It's a gift and a curse all at the same time.
Oh yeah. And do you feel so you feel like to this day you still kind of like play that role a lot of times?
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
Especially in my former job, because I served as an executive assistant for our local county's parks director for about 6 years. And then some stuff went down, and I was able to go into a project management position then for about 2.5 years. And actually, right before I resigned, because I'm currently between jobs, because I resigned from my former position because a lot of this started coming out that they were not going to I kept interviewing and trying to really get into the project management side, but they again saw me as a political creature, and they wanted me back in the executive assistant role. And there was several different factors, but that was one of the factors why I ended up taking a pause right now. And I'm just, working at church and family stuff, and kind of, just kind of with the pandemic ongoing. I think it's kind of being a little bit selfish right now. I'm just taking some time to recharge. But again, no, that though, again, what I heard from my former bosses and peers, and even sometimes the public, or people in, it's always like, oh, it was always something around that theme. And a lot of times, kind of came up in various ways. But that is a lot of what executive assistants do, and especially working for a government agency, and a levy funded government agency, that was a skill. But then again, I was really struggling to continue to find joy in that job, and kind of replenish myself. So again, I'm just kind of taking some time to pause and refocus right now.
Yeah, totally understood. Got you. Thanks. Okay, next question. How would you describe your relationship with your emotions?
It's complex. Because I think by and large, I'm very introspective, and really I practice a lot of journaling, and of course prayer and Bible reading and meditate. So I feel like I'm getting to know myself better and better, but at the same time, it's also, my emotions can still get the better of me in situations, especially when, and I think professionally, especially, but I find myself every once in a while I would have, one of those emotional meltdowns, and I'd feel like everything would come out, and I get, and then you kind of, the stiff upper lip then comes back. And, but I think that I'm still a work in progress around really naming and identifying a lot of my emotions, and of course figuring out how to interact with them better, so they don't get the better of me, especially in stressful, tense situations, because I can get very angry. I can get very kind of just nervous, and I say anxiety. I don't know if it would necessarily be medical anxiety, but I can get very very, very frustrated with a lot of things. And but then again, I think people, when I maybe talk with a boss or a supervisor or whatever, they're like, oh, I never, they wouldn't expect that. But then every once in a while, I don't necessarily want to say the real Matt comes out, but it's like, again, my emotions. And then I think, on the other hand, I have really great moments of joy and excitement over things. And, whether it's small pleasure, the food, the coffee, the art, or getting out and hiking to a mountain lake, or looking at, amazing building. Or so I feel like I kind of have highs. I can have highs and lows with my emotions, and really good times, and then really, really not so good times.
For sure. Yeah, that's rich. I feel that. Yeah, and I wouldn't expect that from you either. But at the same time, I also feel like, well, number one, everyone gets angry, so there's that. But on top of that, I feel like the way that you seem to strike me, I feel like you'd probably be the type of person who, like, when you are angry or upset, then it's probably not as noticeable. Correct me if I'm wrong. And you do try not to let it like harm anyone. And that's why you're like trying to like, be like careful with that.
Yeah, it's weird because a lot of times anymore, I mean, and actually for my anger shows up as tears. So the amount of time, I mean, which it wasn't like, it was only about a handful, half a dozen times or so, but every once in a while the tears would start. And of course I'm furious, but I'm like, oh, I'm so sorry, because like I think I rather than trying to, in a way, I think I end up harming myself more than trying to harm others. Because like, I mean, again, anger, it's not that it's complex.
Yeah, no, it sounds like it, but definitely I understand that for sure. You explained it very well. Would you say, generally speaking, which are you more aware of or attuned to? Um, yeah, yeah. Which do you notice more, aware of, and like more attuned to? Your own feelings or other people's feelings? Which again, like generally speaking, I'm sure that you're attuned to both, maybe, but
Mm. Yeah, I think I can really, and this is where creativity can be and storytelling can be a good thing and a bad. I find myself on the day to day really trying to attune myself to the feelings of others. And as part of that, sometimes I think, and because as I continue to get experience and interact with folks, I think sometimes I'm a little too good at, as part of being that attune. Like I know something's going on, and then I create this whole narrative as to why they're acting that way. Because you can, and again, and not to sound too or whatever, because I know that there's an unseen, but I feel like I really can feel like people's energy in a way. And I don't, their emotions and how they're interacting. And then as part of that, rather than actually being a little more direct and maybe having a conversation like, why did you say that? Why did you use that tone? I can then mentally create scenarios. But I think as part, in the last couple of years in particular, as part of this work I'm doing, I think that I am becoming more attuned to my emotions as well. But then again, it's funny, I'm working on figuring out, and creating a narrative for myself as well. But then again, I think I'm more comfortable trying to attune myself to other people's emotions than actually doing the personal work on my own emotions. But I think that I'm definitely feeling my own emotions and paying attention more than I used to.
yeah.
But again, I do kind of in a way thrive on figuring out where other people are coming from and whether they're happy or angry at me or at something else or whatever. But then again, I don't do the work of actually having the conversation with them to see whether or not how I'm feeling and reading their emotions is actually accurate.
Wow. That's great. Really, really great answer.
And I think I like to listen to people a lot too, either about myself or other things too. And I really value other people's when they do share things with me about myself. But then again, I think potentially where I could do some more work would be to actually, especially if it's that feedback that, again, it's still a gift, but it's negative feedback.
Mm-hmm.
I could definitely do better at saying, well, what did you mean by that? Or, what do I heard this? Is that what you even meant? So I think that's a little bit of when I kind of work with other people's emotions. I feel like I'm like really listening to them, or thinking I am.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay. I'm circling the drain here.
No, right.
How would you describe your relationship to your body? Well, I think actually the first question I'll ask you. Actually, no, we'll go with that. Yeah.
No, and again, very. I feel a complex relationship. From a young age, I've always struggled with my weight, and of course, because I like to eat, and then I do like exercise, but that's kind of the first thing to go. It's like go on a long walk or eat a nice dinner. I think I'm gonna eat the nice dinner, and then if I don't feel like it, the long walk will be out the window. But so I think I've over the years really struggled with my relationship with my body, and I'm always working on being healthier and being more active, and want to be better and look better. And I think I think that's always kind of the struggle in my mind. Is like, well, do I want to be healthier just for my own health, so I can, serve others and, be, a more physically active person and able to do more. Or part of it too, though, and where I feel like it gets a little maybe not so positive, is like, well, I want to look better so then other people perceive me as, better looking, or, more fit for the job, or whatever. And I know that there's, I've definitely experienced a lot of things over the years being a fat person where people, like they call, oh, well, yeah, you move fast for a fat person. Like, thank you. And it's one of those things. And again, I know it's just, I always know that I need to be doing more work, but no, I think that it's a complex relationship, but I think I definitely see my body in the whole, like, it's my emotional health, my mental health, my physical health. And I think I used to focus more on just like, oh, if I could just do more sit-ups, do more push-ups, do more cardio, go on more walks, but it's like, well, actually, as I'm kind of unpacking and doing some more of this work, I think a lot of this emotional work is actually really tied in with my physical as well. And it's actually really cool because through my church right now, I've been doing for about 6-8 months now, pretty intensely. I've kind of dabbled, but the last 8 months has been definitely much more consistent. We do that Daniel plan group through our church, and it's really, we do a weekly, like, Zoom call, and then now we've been doing some more hikes, and we focus on, eating. So I think that a part of that, though, is fitting in the faith and the fellow. There's like the F's, but kind of the more emotional and even spiritual side of health as well. So I think I'm seeing my body more as part of the larger whole, rather than just my body and then everything else.
Got it.
Definitely a work in progress.
Yeah, no, for sure. Definitely makes sense. Would you say that you have an affinity, like, how do you feel about adrenaline rushes?
I definitely feel that. And then I've actually come across some articles recently about addiction to stress and even anxiety. And I think that I'm definitely, and I don't really know where exactly I am with all of that, but there is definitely something about the adrenaline of, getting through a stressful situation that I think I need to unpack that more. And then even like with the anxiety, because like I find myself like, there's a lot of things, especially like with work or even like my church stuff right now, where I get really nervous. And I was kind of jokingly, or maybe more seriously even, thinking about, well, I need those nerves to like push me to do better, be better. But then I'm like, is that actually healthy? So it's like, am I kind of like creating my own stress just because I think that makes me do better? But yeah, no, it's definitely, that's something I'm still figuring out a bit, I think. Between adrenaline and I think the different hormones that come in through stress and anxiety.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Just maybe like a couple more questions. But all right, yeah. Just a couple more questions, I'd say. Oh yeah. What would you say is your threshold for abstract conversations? Like when conversations get very philosophical, conceptual, all of that. Like, how would you feel like you do with that? Like very ungrounded.
No, that's a great question. I love abstract conversations. I love philosophy. I love literature. I love science, math. Honestly, Denzel, if I could work it out that I could somehow make money and just be a professional student, I think once you get into conversation, but no, I love discussing all those things, and of course, government, economics. I feel like I always have to be careful though, because I can kind of sometimes want to think I know more about certain topics, so I have to be careful in conversation that I really listen and don't always jump to like share what I think but again, I get a lot out of conversations around abstract topics of various fields, and yeah, it excites me.
Gotcha. Yeah.
But I did love a good gossip session too. So do you know what someone's with? No, I don't know.
No, go ahead. like how is that for you?
Well, no, I mean, I think that again, I'm always trying to figure out other people, and so I love. And of course, in my old job, with executive assistant work in particular, it's like, is it gossiping or is it like, important information for executives to know? I don't know sometimes. So, I love talking about ideas, but I also love talking about people. And sometimes even if they're not in the room. But,
yeah, no, it's cool. I feel like it's interesting because I see it as like, yeah, it's funny that you made that joke. Like I often see it sometimes like, no, I just kind of want to be in the know of what's going on. Like, oh wait, so and so is dating who? Okay, cool. I just wanted to know. That's all. It's something that's good to know. Yeah. Oh, so and so cheated on who? Oh, okay. Good to know.
They're all facts. They're all facts.
Yeah. Like, all right. Well, there you go. Yeah, I feel that for sure. What was the last abstract conversation, or like actually, yeah, just like the last conversation in general that you find yourself like absolutely lost in and like losing time with?
This is always just a little tricky, but actually, I met Mary Schustoff a couple of weeks ago, and it was just going to be for a specific purpose, but we ended up talking for 3.5 hours, and I was shocked when I found out that it was 3.5 hours.
Wow.
Because it just we were all, but no, I that and then actually my pastor, we always right now we're meeting every Wednesday, and we usually have an hour, and I could just keep talking with Pastor Allen, but then he's like, oh, well, I have to go. So definitely, I kind of have really good weekly conversations with him. But no, I can find myself, it's amazing how when I get in a conversation with folks, like how an hour, 3 hours, something that if I was like doing, data entry or, some more mundane task or gardening for that matter, it'd be like 3 hours in the hot sun. But yeah, so yeah, I can find myself in those conversations quite frequently. So
okay, got you. How would you describe your relationship with the future? Like how often you might think about it? Yeah.
That's again a great question. I think about the future a lot. Kind of just from probably a more nebulous, like I'm not necessarily specifically planning for the future, specifically my future, but I do think about it a lot. I think that honestly, the pandemic and a lot of things that have been happening, it's definitely shifted how I think about the future just in the last, year and a half, going on 2 years. But I think that it excites me in a way, but then I can vacillate between being excited and scared. And I mean, as a Christian, like, and I feel like sometimes I can just say this and it sounds so trivial, but I mean, I know it's in the Lord's hands, but then I still, how that then intersects with the other tensions of just like the day-to-day decisions. And, you read about, climate change and just, all the things going on right now. And it's like, where are we going to be in 25 years, for that matter, or 50 years? And then again, I kind of bring myself back. I'm like, well, it's in the Lord's hands. But then still, Matt, you have to make decisions about your future. And of course, right now I'm a little bit anxious about my future in a way, but also excited with like my career. I'm thinking about, what's going to be next for me. I mean, right now, in a way, I'm taking it a day, day by day, helping mom and dad with some stuff, and of course with the church, and I can get very caught up. But then I am thinking about the future in a way. But again, it's amazing how, the days start just flying by and the weeks start flying by. And, it didn't seem like that long ago that, August 2021 seemed like ways out there. And then, it's going to be this. So I think about it a lot.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. How about your past?
Again, I think about it a lot. I think I'm always, whether it's my recent past or even my not so recent past, I'm always like, well, how could I have handled that differently or said something different? Or, kind of, I'm always analyzing what I've done and said, or not done and not said. I have a lot of fond memories. I can be very nostalgic in a way. I can get embarrassed about things I didn't do, or attitudes I had, or fears I had, or whatever, that I've either conquered or not. But I think especially living in the general vicinity of where I grew up, and that I'm constantly faced with the past. So the past and the present get very blurred. And then sometimes in my weaker, or whatever you want to say, moments, I'm like, is the past gonna be my present, gonna be my future?
Whoa.
Probably. I constantly anyway, yeah, that was a lot. But I can get really hung up in the past, for better or for worse.
Okay.
Mostly, I mean, I have a lot of fond memories of my childhood and
Mhm.
everything, but then of course sometimes it's not always fond. So
For
kind of
sure.
making sure I don't get too bogged down with how I used to be. Yeah. So
Yeah. Would you say that you think, which one do you think that you think more about, the future or the past?
great question. I think, honestly, I think about the past
Mhm.
a lot more. I mean, it depends on the moment, or kind of who I'm with. But I think if I'm on my own, I can find myself, I think, thinking about the past more than the future.
Yeah. Got you. Okay. Um, what is your relationship to brainstorming?
Like my own personal brainstorming, or brainstorming with others?
Brainstorming with others.
Okay. I
Like,
like it. Oh, sorry.
okay, yeah, yeah, let me clarify. So like, say that you're in an environment where, you know, ideas are just being shot out, like around you. Who are you in the room? Like, are you excited and you're throwing out some of those ideas too? Or are you, yeah, like who would you be in that room?
I think I generally have found myself, and would find myself more on the listening side, and like, oh wow, that's a great idea. I mean, honestly, in some of my weaker moments, I'd be like, oh wow, why didn't I think of that? I'll get a little jealous. But no, and then I can find myself feeling that, like, oh well, I don't have any ideas to contribute because everybody else is already thinking. But I'll try to speak up, if I have something to share that hasn't been shared, or maybe could add on to somebody else's idea. But I think I would definitely find myself in a brainstorming scenario being a bit more of a listener and a thinker, rather than automatically jumping out and saying, oh, this is my bright idea, let's do this.
Yeah.
But then again, if people turn to me and ask me, I'm not afraid to share, you know, if people ask. But I think especially if it's a larger, I think it could be a little quieter, but very engaged, but you know, in my head. Not necessarily. And I think I'm very conflict averse.
Mhm.
And even if I might find someone's brainstorm idea not so bright, I'd probably, it would take a lot of energy to question it or say, well, what about this? Or what do you know, if even though in my head, I might be thinking this is the stupidest idea ever, I wouldn't necessarily say that.
Right.
I might talk about it with someone else that I'm more comfortable with later.
Yeah.
But I think it would depend
Right.
on, it would depend on my comfort level with the group of people too, and how well I know them and they know me, or
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. And you said that you did also give or you were about to present you brainstorming like with just yourself. Is that like different?
maybe a little. Like, no, I can start to run a lot of scenarios again, because I think in a way I get very comfortable working solo, and then I kind of start, though, you know, as part of that, I can have very active voice or voices in my head, and you know, kind of look at all different aspects of an idea, or come up with multiple ideas and weigh them against each other. But I can find myself brainstorming on my own, which is maybe a scary thing, but
No, I think that's pretty cool and probably normal.
Does happen.
Yeah. How easy is it for you to kind of like run simulations in your head that carry out exactly like how you thought that it would?
So basically, like, create a simulation of how, say, an event's gonna run or a day is gonna go, or
Yeah, like future pace that, and then the way that you imagine it is almost exactly like how it's going to happen. Like, would you say that that happens more, or would you say that you're more of the type of person that's like, when you get into a situation and you have to like kind of like warm up first, and the second time around it's like, okay, now I know how this is like, so I'm more acclimated to it?
I honestly think I'm really good at running simulations that run how I create them in my brain, especially but then again, I mean, there are times, because I think it's part of that, I can run multiple simulations of, well, this is how it's going to go terribly wrong, this is how it's going to go well, and then what do I need, and I think this kind of gets to my brainstorming that I'll do. I'm like, well, what do I need to change now so I'm more like this path versus the bad path, or yeah. And I think I do that a lot, honestly, and I mean, and I think that's, you know, now that I'm thinking about this, talking, I think that can tend to be why, though, sometimes I prefer to do things on my own, because when you start getting too many people involved in a simulation, there's so many unknowns that I can't quantify or build in. So then that's where I start to get a little more anxious, or you know, cautious with, or you know, my simulations can be very different from what actually happens, because so and so is having a good day and they surprise me and they're not unhappy to help me with this, or it ends up actually I didn't account for certain things, and then people get frustrated and it goes back to the yeah, I think it's definitely a complex thing, but I definitely do it a lot. And again, with fewer variables, I think my scenarios can, and of course, or the more I do things, my simulations can be pretty accurate.
Awesome. Okay. And I guess kind of to wrap it up, these were actually the last two questions. But I'm kind of going back to the abstract one.
Uh-huh.
Um, would you say that you're, I feel like a lot of people, they there's a lot of people who read deep into things. Like everyone says that they're an overthinker. Everyone says, like, oh yeah, I read deep into situations, whatever. Would you say though that that being said, like the average human being like reads deep into things? Would you say that you're someone who really does, or would you say that you're kind of like average, or you actually really don't read too deep into things, like looking at all of the like, is it good for you to be like, is it easy for you to be able to look at stuff more like face value and concrete, or
Yes, wonderful. I wish I could take things at face value more than I. No, Denzel, I read way too into things sometimes. And actually, as an example, well, not, but no, I just went out for kind of a happy hour type thing with a few former coworkers who actually a couple of them are retired yesterday from my former job that I resigned from, and there were several things that were said and looks that were and I found myself even then, and I'm doing a little bit better, and even like talking about this, but I was starting to create these like scenarios or read into what they were saying, and I was like, is this true or not? But no, I feel like, and maybe this is, I shouldn't call it a, it's definitely, I feel like it can be a gift, but I think more often than I feel it's a curse for me. But I know I can overthink and overanalyze pretty much everything, to be perfectly honest. And sometimes I'm right, and then that keeps me validated. But then
okay,
often I'm wrong. So I
gotcha.
throw that data out.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I really, really, really appreciate your honesty. This has been golden. Um,
Well, thank you.
very,
Great.
yeah, very much so. Okay, and then the last question: what is something? It's a two-part, so I guess I should be clear. I should be clear about that. What
Nice.
is something that you'd say is obvious to you, but not really obvious to other people? And then the reverse, something that's obvious to other people, but it's not usually very obvious to you.
Is this just about myself or something in
Oh,
general?
something in general.
Okay.
Like, how does everyone keep on catching this? And I just, I just don't. Or,
Yeah.
and then also like, okay, how's everyone not seeing this? But like, how does not everyone understand this? But yet I always seem to be the one that does.
Okay. I think something that I feel like a lot of people see and I don't, and actually this kind of goes back to my response to the former question, but
Mhm.
sometimes people don't mean anything when they say something. I feel like I'm always trying to read in to people, like what people say or like how they say it or what, like, and I think that a lot of people are better at just taking things at face value, and that's very obvious to them. But for me, I'm like, oh, I'm trying to, I think that um I don't, I have a hard time believing that sometimes people just say things and they don't mean something.
Mhm.
And then as far as something I feel like that's a good question. um Maybe this is gonna sound a little cheesy, but I think that I just believe that there's beauty in everything, and even when things aren't going well, and even when I'm getting like, I think that there's just always opportunities to actually get some enjoyment out of the moments, because they're, the current moments are even as challenging sometimes as they are, you know at some point, we're going to look back and realize that, our life is just a series of little moments, and if we don't take those opportunities to just get a little bit of beauty or enjoyment out of them, then it's going to be the end of our life, and we're going to be like, what did we do?
Would you say that kind of goes into why you like take a lot of pictures and stuff too?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep. No, it's funny. I can trigger myself every time, Denzel, when I read Thornton Wilder's Our Town. I just start bawling. And then recently I finished Marilyn Robinson's Gilead. And again, I found myself strangely like the whole narrative structure of that novel and everything was really kind of challenging to get into at first. But by the end of the novel, I'm hooked and I want to read her other work too. But again, kind of with both of those, it's that I just feel that concept of enjoying life. And of course, as Christians, I know we temper that with, we're looking forward to heaven, and that's going to be even more amazing than anything here. But I think so many times folks can get just kind of lost in the day-to-day mundane and think, oh, well, they have to go to, I don't know, Disneyland or Paris or something to have this mountaintop experience. But sometimes there's a lot of beauty, and there's just, let's enjoy the little moments. So
Nice. And with those pictures, like you said that you take pictures at events and stuff too. Like, are you someone who also like takes pictures as in like memories of like just with people and stuff like that, or would you say like,
oh yeah,
yeah,
yes, now talk to my brother and sister and mom and dad. I have a whole album of snapshots of mom. No, I mean, and honestly, I love I always often say that nature photos or like animals, flowers, plants, I feel most comfortable with those. But then if I get to know somebody really well, like I can just take their photo, and I love doing that. And I'm also getting more comfortable with doing events and portraits and headshots more professionally. But again, there's that whole relational element, I think, to photography and being able to capture someone's picture, when they're in a moment good for themselves. So
gotcha. Okay, I'm pretty much done. This one is
cool.
just like, yeah, this last question is just for my own, I guess, fun. Would you say that you're someone who can be very detail oriented?
Yes, I love details.
Yeah.
Also, but that being said, Denzel,
Yeah.
I can also, it depends on, I can also be lazy and sloppy and just want to get things done. But if I love what I'm doing, like with photography, if it's baking, cooking, if it's, watching a movie or doing something, yeah, I love details. And then, if I'm really pushing myself at work, the details, yeah.
Perfect. All right. Okay. So now we enter the verification process. So the type that I believe that you are is ESFJ. And everyone who understands like personality types, or like, not actually, let me rephrase that. Most people who get into this, like there's 16 different types, they only look at those like 4 letters, and then they kind of like base it off of that. So those 4 letters is what we call the dichotomies. And I'll break those down for you. But then after that, I'm going to tell you about the actual like in-depth richness like behind it. So dichotomies first. As I said, you, in my opinion, are an ESFJ. E is the opposite of I. So I stands for introverted. E stands for extroverted. Everybody has extroversion and everyone has introversion in them, which we're going to get into later. Same with the other 3 letters. So this is what trips up a lot of people, like, oh, but I'm an ambivert. It's like, we'll get there. But yeah, so for you, I believe that you are an extrovert. Introverts are people who you'll often read online. It's like, oh, it's people who are they get their energy from being by themselves, and extroverts get their energy from being with people. That's not always the case. As a matter of fact, and again, we're going to get there, you as an extrovert, from what I believe, you said that like you can be with people and like, you also are like handling situations, like mediating in situations, and then you feel depleted afterwards. It's like, hey, that's sometimes that's still something, and that's also an interesting thing with the ESFJ as well, like, because that's like something that y'all are very skilled at. But just because you're very skilled at it, probably better than like most people, with just maybe like one other type that's probably like right there with you. Um, it doesn't mean that, you know, you're just getting like all this enjoyment from that. So yeah, like I said, we'll get there. But then extroversion, the way that I like to explain it, is more of a focus on the external world.
Hmm.
Yeah, so therefore it's not necessarily that you get recharged by being with people all the time and stuff like that. It doesn't even always mean that you're like very lively and loud, but it's that you have more of a focus on the real world and like what's around you, and putting things out into the world. Whereas like introverts, they have more of a focus on what's inside their heart, what's inside their mind, whatever it might be, and bringing things from the world and into them. And but again, we have like both sides to us.
Cool.
Secondly, the second dichotomy is sensing versus intuition. So sensors are usually looking for stuff that's verifiable and reliable. They actually tend to look at things, you know, very concrete. They like to like procedures, and they like to have things like, you know, just like factual, pretty much, and not really like reach like way too far into the abstract and the conceptual. Whereas like intuitives, they kind of like live in this like abstract, conceptual, philosophical place, and they like to kind of like, they pretty much dwell there and they thrive from there like a lot. And I'm definitely like, that was one of the parts I was like looking back and forth between with you, because obviously you answer a lot about like how you like really are in the abstract and conceptual, and you think a lot about that. But I have reasoning that, you know, I'd like to present to you, and you again, like, definitely correct me if I'm wrong when we get there, because I want to know if like this, I think that there's a reason why you are the way that you are. So yeah, but that's what intuition is versus like sensing. And feeling versus thinking, again, everyone has feeler side, everyone has a thinker side. Thinkers tend to make decisions based off of metrics, data, facts, very impersonal. And then feelers tend to make decisions based off of like interpersonal dynamics or their own like internal values, and, you know, sometimes even like emotions of their own, like of their own or of other people's. And lastly, judger is J, perceiver is the opposite, which is P. A perceiver is somebody who's like just kind of like really, you know, like free spirited, and like just, they don't really like have like a sense of time a lot of times, and they're not very like organized in the world. Whereas like a judger is somebody who's usually like, they kind of like seem to have like an aim. They're pretty organized in their external world. In fact, judges kind of like to keep their external world organized so that they can have their internal world as a place to like be free in. Whereas like perceivers, they like to have their internal world organized, and their external world is a little bit more like messy and stuff like that. So they just kind of like roam in that sense. And I believe that you are a judger. So that's the 4 dichotomy letters as of right now. Like I said, ESFJ is what I think that you are. So I think that you're an extrovert, who is the real world for you is like, you know, the external and the focus on that. I think that you're a sensor, which means that, you know, you're at your best when you're focused on what is procedural, what is reliable, what is verifiable, and what is like factual. I believe that you're a feeler. You make decisions based off of like your own values and the values of others around you, their feelings, emotions, and all of that. And I believe that you're a judger. You're pretty like organized, and you kind of like keep order, and you prefer order and like an aim or vision, instead of like just being like super wild spirited and all of that. And before I get to like the deep stuff, do you have anything to say about that so far?
No, this is all great. And it's so awesome to be able to do this in person with you, because I'll be honest, I've taken the one version of the test multiple times over several years.
Mhm.
And I don't know if this is helpful, but INFP is always the result I would get. But actually, as you're describing all of this, I think all of this is resonating a lot more than the more impersonal, like, computer version of this. So I guess that was just what I was like, okay, this is good. And I love the way you're describing all of this, and it actually it all sounds and feels very, very accurate for me. So
Perfect. Yeah,
you.
and I'm actually glad that you said that because I think that a lot of people of your type and ISFJs, so like the introverted version of your type, they get confused for INFPs a lot. And that is because even though the dichotomies are very different, the mental processes that we're about to go into, they INFPs have the same polarity. That
Mm,
so like it's very similar. But yeah, there's kind of like a lot of big things that are different between the SFJs and the NFPs that I actually did consider INFP at one point for you. And then when I asked like certain questions, I was like, oh,
yeah.
yep, I see where it is. So, but yeah, like I said, I'm glad that you had mentioned that though.
No, thank you. No, because especially the I versus E dichotomy, the
Mhm.
way you described that is beautiful, and I think that that's it. Definitely, it's awesome. I'm just anyway. So thank you. It's kind
Yeah,
of
yeah,
and all
no,
this is it's a conversational thing, you know, and
yeah,
your
absolutely.
scope.
Yeah, and I'm glad that you feel that way because yeah, I'm always like more about like accuracy than just throwing what I think on the person.
Yeah.
So yeah, now getting into the mental processes, these are called cognitive functions. So like I said, every type, there's 16 types in general. Every type has 4 dichotomies, but every type also has 4 mental processes. So the way that my favorite business that kind of like goes about this, they describe our 4 mental processes as a 4-passenger car.
Mm.
So you have your driver, which is your dominant function or mental process. I like to also call them superpowers. Your driver is the one that you are most skilled in, you're most talented in. You kind of like live in this world. And then you have your uh, uh, co-pilot or your passenger. So that one is your second strongest function. However, we tend to skip it a lot of times and not pay too much attention to it, and kind of use it in like a one trick pony or like two-dimensional kind of way, like when it's useful, just so that we can like get something done. But we skip it a lot of times to go to our third strongest function, which is the 10-year-old. That's what Personality Hacker calls it. The 10-year-old is right behind the co-pilot. And the 10-year-old, we call it a 10-year-old because the way that it operates, 10-year-olds still say smart things. So it's not a bad mental process slash function, but you don't want it driving the car. And so a lot of times we tend to skip it though, because the 10-year-old has the same attitude as our driver function.
Hmm.
So when I say attitude, I mean that dichotomy of extroversion versus introversion. So there's 2 extroverts in every car, and there's 2 introverts in every car. And the way that we decide whether you're an extrovert or an introvert is dependent on who the driver is. So if the driver is an extrovert, then the co-pilot's an introvert. If the driver is an introvert, then the co-pilot's an extrovert. But then the 10-year-old is going to be the same as the driver. And then the 3-year-old, which is the final mental process, is going to be the same as the co-pilot.
Okay.
Does that make sense so far?
No, that's a really cool. That's a cool. That is cool.
Awesome, cool, yeah. I was thinking like, man, like should I bring up a like share the screen or something? Usually like in person, I have like certain cards or like a graphic that I can show people. But cool, yeah. As long as you have that like mental image of like the 4-passenger car and everything, then awesome.
No, that was great. You described it really well.
Awesome, cool,
Yeah.
cool, cool. All right, so your dominant function as an ESFJ or your driver function as an ESFJ is nicknamed Harmony by Personality Hacker. The technical name for it is extroverted feeling, or FE for shorthand. This function is the way that I describe it is pretty much like knowing the exact buttons to push in the exact order to get an emotional reaction from an individual or a group of people. It's also very in tune with how people are interpersonally and their feelings. This is why you absorb people's feelings a lot of times and you can't even tell them apart a lot of times like from yours. This is also why, even from a young age, you were really good at being able to understand how people are interpersonally connecting and mediating in this sense. And so even though you were like put in that situation, you're like, oh, like my parents kind of did it. You had a talent for that already. From a young age, the way that this function could be described is that if you are watching, for example, like your mother, then your mother, is given flowers, right? And when your mother is given flowers, then you see, oh, that made her happy. Then you see that your mother gets yelled at by maybe your father, God forbid, but then it's like, oh, that made mom sad. Then you see that you bring home an F. It's like, oh, that made mom angry. You go from that small thing of interpersonal up to more complex things, such as like, okay, let's look at group family dynamics. Like when you watch TV, oh, this person said that in this tone, and then that caused this domino, and that caused that domino. And then you move from the family dinner scenes on TV to like communities. Oh, at church, this deacon said this, and now that's causing this, and boom, 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 which is where also you get that gossip thing from, because it's like, oh, I just like to see like how things are affecting people,
Yeah.
Then it goes into like whole societies. Whoa, this president is having problems with this president over here, this king, because this is going on in that way. So it becomes very complex. And that's that driver function of FE, and it's an or harmony, and it's wanting everyone to be on the same page, just wanting to meet everyone's needs. Now, just to make sure though, does that resonate with you so far?
No, it does deeply. Thank you. I think that's really, really cool.
Awesome, cool. And just to like humor you, the opposite of an extroverted feeling is introverted feeling, which is what the INFP has as their driver function. So the INFP, introverted feeling, they call it authenticity and personality hacker. That is all about being completely in tune with your own feelings and trying to like live out an expression of who like you really truly believe that you are. Very strong focus on your own motivations and understanding your motivations and feelings and all of that, and then using that to be able to understand other people's and like kind of like matching it. So it's not even necessarily like feeling other people's emotions as it's opposed to like finding the same emotion within yourself to match it with others and living by those values that you've now created. Yeah. And from what you were telling me about your emotions and everything and how you said that they're like very complex, you said that you're very introspective, which we're going to get there. But you were like, yeah, I'm like learning to interact with them, especially like, my anger and all of that. But like you said that you're way more in tune with, how others feel. And if anything, you're trying to learn how to get more of that introverted feeling part of you. You're trying to learn to like create like your own narrative, like, which is so interesting how you said all of that, because yeah, we're gonna get to that.
No, harmony, that really resonates with
Awesome.
me. So
Cool.
that's cool.
Now, the auxiliary function or the co-pilot is called introverted sensing. So this is your second strongest function. This function, and okay, this is something else that I'm going to now throw into you. So this is a lot of information, but hopefully, like I'm sending this video to you afterwards so you can like rewatch this section and everything, and I'll send you an article or something to help you too. But with how I said that there's two extroverts in the car and two introverts in the car, they're also flip sides of the coin. So the driver and the 3-year-old are flip sides of the coin. They always come together. Same with the co-pilot and the 10-year-old. They are flip sides of the coin. They always come together. And so everybody who has harmony anywhere in their car will always have accuracy, which we'll get to. That's your 3-year-old anywhere like in their car as well. Anyone who has introverted sensing, also known as memory, inside their car will always have exploration, also known as extrovert intuition, somewhere inside their car, because they're two sides of the coin. So that being said, your co-pilot is called introverted sensing. This is all about capturing the details of a moment of life. And it's all about like being very in tune with the impressions that you get and seeing what works, seeing what's very reliable. And so a lot of times, like one example that I like to use to like fully demonstrate like what introverted sensing could be is, okay, this year I baked cookies for the Christmas party. And everyone really loved it. Extroverted feeling, your harmony is like, whoa, everyone really loved it. So then introverted sensing is like, okay, next year I'm gonna bake the same cookies because I know that everybody's gonna love it. And then next thing you know, the year after that, same cookies. Before, next thing you know, it becomes a tradition, becomes a procedure. And that's why you're like introverted sensing is so known for like traditions and procedures and everything, because then it's also able to like have something like this has always worked from my experience. But like I said before, we tend to use our co-pilot a lot of times as a one-trick pony, and we'll like use it here and there, because again, it still is our strongest, like our second strongest, but we'll skip over that to our 10-year-old function a lot of times, because the 10-year-old is more comfortable with the driver, and we don't have to do as much work with the driver 10-year-old relationship. And so your 10-year-old is called extrovert intuition, also known as exploration. Exploration, this is the side of you that loves to conceptualize. 10-year-olds, once again, are not bad, but you don't want it driving the car. So people who have this 10-year-old that you have exploration as a strength, so if they have it in their co-pilot or their driver's seat, they can be very imaginative, kind of like you. Like these are the people that like brainstorm a lot that you probably look at and you're like, dang, I wish I came up with that, you know? And they're able to like have so many of these things. And when they make certain guesses like that and they're throwing stuff on the wall, a lot of times like they're usually right. They can like make guesses about like situations and stuff like that. Whereas like with you can make all of these guesses and you're reading into situations and everything, and you're like, man, Denzel, I wish that I wasn't reading into situations so much. Somebody could say something, and all of a sudden, my exploration has this narrative. Oh, what is going on over here? What about this? I wonder if boom, 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 and you're like connecting a whole bunch of stuff, and it's like your introverted sensing, your co-pilot is trying to like knock and interfere with your driver harmony and your 10-year-old exploration as they're having their like, they're going wild with all their ideas. Introverted sensing is like, hey, we're not good at this. let's let's stick to me, the one who looks at what's reliable, looks at what's always worked. How about instead of making all these presumptions, let's go ask the person, hey, why are you feeling this way? Or what happened? So that now we don't have to make all of these guesses that are not really accurate. And then your exploration is going to look at harmony and it's like, but this is more fun. Like, and who cares even if it's right? Like, we're making stories. This is creative, which is where a lot of your creativity comes from. And then your introverted sensing is like, hey, I'm not saying that you have to completely shut up, but I'm just saying that before we get creative and explore all of these things, let's look at the facts. And then if you want to write your own little fan fiction based off of this, go ahead and knock yourself out. Yeah. But we have to make sure that I'm keeping you in check. And the driver's like, okay, I guess that would be best for creating harmony because we don't want to spread bad gossip. Does that make sense?
No, that's awesome. And if I could add, because I think it's part of this dynamic too, because I think a lot of times when that's the way you describe all that is very accurate, and there's a little bit of this too, like the co-pilot and the driver interaction. That's where like that hard work comes in. So like the back and forth between the 10-year-old and the driver is a little easier. So
exactly. Yeah. Your best work comes from that driver and that co-pilot, which is also a lot of times why like your co-pilot, it's like, okay, I know what's reliable, I know what works, and I know who is reliable. And these people don't really seem reliable to me. So I just kind of want to do this alone. And that's why even though as an extrovert, you're like, you know what, let me just do this myself.
And I think, because if I may kind of add one more level of
absolutely. Yeah.
Wow, thank you. I think sometimes what I find myself in these situations where I need to do that work is how I get scared because like if I have that conversation with that person, I think that maybe the harmony is going to be disrupted because if I ask what's actually going on, it's going to create some tension that then I don't want to have to work to like mitigate.
Yep.
I mean,
Yeah. And that's a really big thing. Actually, that ties right back into the last mental process or cognitive function we're going to talk about, which is called technically introverted thinking, also known as accuracy. This is your 3-year-old. Again, even though it's your weakest, it doesn't necessarily mean that you are like just absolutely trash at it. It just means that you tend to like not spend as much time using this function as strongly as the other ones. So introverted thinking is the flip side of harmony. So introverted thinking is all about cold data, removing the human aspect in a way, and like just kind of like looking at like what's consistently logical. So like, and this is one also big thing, like something can be airtight in its logic and still not be right. But this is the part of you that's like looking for consistency. And this is where you hold all of your personal opinions. But just like you said earlier, you said that a lot of times you're political, which people who are who have harmony above their accuracy, they tend to be political because it's like, I'm not going to say what I accurately actually think because that is going to cause disruption in the harmony realm. Whereas people who usually have accuracy above their harmony, they're the types of people who just say things and then everyone's like frazzled and then they're like, oh shoot, and they don't have enough harmony a lot of times to like kind of clean it up. And which a lot of times then we're gonna have to be the ones to smooth things over. What he's trying to say is
right.
I could we, but yeah, I'm an ENFJ, so that's so like very similar to you, but just like slightly different. But yeah, we both have harmony as our driver, and we both have accuracy as our co-pilot. I mean, as our inferior. So I relate to that whole like, yeah, let me keep. It's been something that I had to really work on. And like being like, okay, yes, this might disrupt the peace, but I have to say it. And then when you're really developed, then you learn to say these things and kind of break the ice, but then you have a plan like, but I also have the energy and the tools to be able to fix this rather than putting things like under the rug, like, oh, I'm not going to say anything because it might cause problems. Now, of course, this also doesn't mean, in my opinion at least, that we just share every single thing because it's like, okay, yeah, now, you know, I can fix any situation. No, like some opinions just don't need to be said. You don't have to walk over to a Trump rally or whatever it might be and then just start stating your opinion. It's just not necessary. But like in certain situations where it's like, okay, no, it is good to share the opinion that you have and have a civil discussion about it. Because it might really like help things. So that's where that's what your accuracy function is. And it could clash with your driver function a lot of times because you're like, you know, trying to keep the peace, but then it's like, I want to speak my mind. And it's like, and this can also be the place that you go into in times of stress. Like when you're really, really, really like stressed out, like you can start being very self-critical and sometimes even critical towards others. Because it's like, okay, but this is also the part of you that you said that you wish you could be a student for life. This is the part of you that's obsessed with just kind of like learning and like taking in all a bunch of like Jeopardy information, for example, and like just like knowing things. Because again, even though this is your 3-year-old, a lot of times we can like indulge there. And then your 10-year-old is the place where we have a lot of fun too. So your extrovert intuition or exploration side is like, wow, I just love being creative. I just love being able to do this. Because again, your 10-year-old might be bad in situations where you're trying to like guess and do things, maybe even reinvent the whole wheel, but it still comes in really well when it comes to like creativity and actually looking at the mundane things in life and then creating some kind of beauty from there. You know, it's helping introverted sensing of that co-pilot see things that like, you know, are just like right there in life right now, and then adding some more color to it. Yeah. And so that's one of the biggest things that your 10-year-old and your inferior function, your 3-year-old, have in common. And as a coach, like for me, I train people on how to develop all of these characters in their car so that they can work together as a team and they can be at their strongest. And then the best way to do that is by developing your co-pilot function. Because when you develop your co-pilot function, I see it kind of like feeding a baby. The more that you're feeding a child, the more food that they're gonna like end up spilling to the floor. And then that dog, which could be represented as the 3-year-old, comes and eats that food as well. So a lot of times we don't even have to focus on trying to really develop that 3-year-old as long as we're developing that co-pilot. But if we're not developing that co-pilot and if we're not learning to lean more on that, which is also, I thought it was so cool that you knew, like something in you knew, like, okay, I think I'm actually at my best when I'm procedural, but something in me just always wants to, and that was literally your 10-year-old saying like, okay, I know that the co-pilot probably knows better, but drive it. It's me. Come on. And it's like, but the thing is, like, as long as you know that, like, okay, yeah, when you get procedural, then now kind of like going back to that cookies example. Okay, yeah, sure, we can make this a tradition, and every year we make the same cookies. But how about we give the 10-year-old a little bit of space? Okay, the cookies work this year. How about next year? 10-year-old, what do you think? Should we add sprinkles? Okay, yeah, sure. Yeah, let's do that. Okay, it worked. All right. So next year then, let's add another thing. Okay, how about we add this and how about we add that? No. Let's still take it a little bit at a time. And once you make those like progressive leaps, like with the 10-year-old, then now you're slowly but surely expanding and more reliable.
This is great.
And yeah, there's so much more to all of this, obviously, but that's, just an over encapsulating thing about your type. And like I said, there's 15 others, but there's 8 mental processes in total. So like me and Mary, we have the same type. And so Mary also has that harmony driver and then that accuracy 10-year-old. But then the co-pilot for her is called introverted intuition rather than introverted sensing. And her co-pilot is extroverted sensing rather than extroverted intuition. And those two also have their own thing. But yeah.
No, this is fascinating. So thank you. No, because this is all I really appreciate you sharing your skills and talent here with me, because this is making a lot of sense. And I'm loving that this is, where, I'm really refining, I think, with your help, like where I need to do this work to just kind of continue moving forward. But no, this is exciting.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, no problem. Do you have any final questions?
No, I think this has been awesome, and I really appreciate you taking time on a Friday afternoon here to talk with me and help me with all of this. And no, I think I'm good for now, but
Awesome.
I'll
Cool.
definitely be thinking about all this, and
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm excited.
Sure. And I'll send you after the session, I'll send you in an email this video recording so that you can rewatch it at any point, as well as some links that you can check out just to kind of like get you started on like looking at what an ESFJ is, some ways that you could like work on it. I highly recommend, like, if you like podcasts and stuff like that, like Personality Hacker, they have so many great podcasts where they're teaching you, like they even have like one or two podcasts for every personality type that's like an hour long, and them just talking about like how that personality type can better their life like overall and stuff like that. And then of course, like I said, like I offer coaching services if you're ever interested in that. So yeah.
Well, I was going to say that was actually one question that just came. Would you, in your email, do you have like a little more information that I could look over about like what it would look like if maybe I wanted to do coaching? If you
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I can send you a link about that. And yeah, whatever you decide, then we can definitely pick whichever package works best for you.
Great. Yeah, no, because this was great. Almost, a couple hours. And again, I really thank you for this time. And again, Mary is such a good, friend, and it was so awesome to catch up with her. And I jumped at the opportunity to spend some time with you. So I really appreciate
Yeah,
this.
for sure. Even through text, I could already tell like, oh wow, like I told my wife, I was like, wow, he seems like a really awesome guy. So that's cool. Like there's just certain people that you can tell, like even through text messages, like, oh, they have the decency to text in this way and add certain punctuation, you know. And
Hopefully you didn't judge me too hard because I have a hotmail.com. I just came across this buzz. It's like you use the Hotmail. I was like, what?
nah, yeah, no, I didn't judge you hard. I actually like give people my Yahoo. So it's like, you know, I have different emails anyway. But I just figured it was probably one of those things. I was like, hey, you know, it is what it is.
I had to chuckle. Anyway, well, Denzel, thank you so much. I hope you and your family have a great weekend. And
Yeah, for sure.